All right. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching us online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the head of studio here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a quite cozy red jumper today. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? Yeah, quite a lot today. Welcome. This bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England and by generous donations from members of the public, just like yourselves. We offer a studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around, fairly relaxed here. There's a kitchen back there. You're welcome to make a cup of tea or coffee or grab a glass of water. If you need to take a break at any point, there is a quiet space just next to this space. So to my left, that's your right. Around the corner there, there is a little room with some sofas and beanbags and things. It's pretty well soundproofed. Not perfectly soundproofed, but fairly well soundproofed. So if you need to pop in there and, take a moment, feel free. We're not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, that is probably real. So the studio team will direct you to the fire exits, but in any event, they are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right, on either end. But should we need them, we will direct you towards them. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor just next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. Those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lautim is here. He will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so that the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at pmstudiouk.bsky.social on Blue Sky, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. All right, our speaker for today is Reuben Armstrong. Reuben is a video design director and studio resident. His new documentary, An Exercise in Perspective, follows blind runner and punk frontman Phil Harrison, who's also here with us today, as he trains for his first London marathon. Today, Reuben's going to break down how his eclectic creative approach rooted in animation, design, and a love of unorthodox visual techniques led to the film's immersive bespoke camera setups that let us see the world from Phil's perspective. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Reuben.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you. So I'm a tall white man with dark hair and a beard, wearing a white t-shirt, black trousers, and a grey shirt. It always feels a bit weird doing those, but we do them every week in the studio, and it's an accessibility thing. So that's my visual ID for people who can't see me, who might be listening to the talk rather than watching it. And it's particularly relevant today because we'll be showing a film, talking about a film, which is all about sight loss, about one man's journey with his sight loss. And so, to start, I will describe what's on the screen. So I've got a poster frame from the film here. It says An Exercise in Perspective at the top. That's the name of the film. And we've got 21 circles with images from the film, which I won't describe all now because they'll become clear through the talk. And at the bottom, we have some braille, which is completely useless in this form because you can't touch the screen. This whole talk's really going to be an exercise in accessibility as well and sort of exploring that. And the braille makes sense when it's printed out, but we sort of thought we would leave it there because if you're sighted, it still gives you a hint at what it's about. So it's all up for debate. And that's sort of what we've learned is accessibility is not really something that you just sort of tick off and solve. It's a sort of constant journey that you've got to sort of think about along the way. So bear with me if I put my foot in it. As Martin introduced me really well, I'm Reuben. I'm a video design director and I run a company called Reuben & Co. It's a sort of networked hybrid company of lots of different freelancers. It's more like a kind of collective, a network. So I've got a kind of spider diagram here, pointing at all types of people who we work with, from illustrators to producers, coders, animators, editors, sound designers, camera operators. And so we build a bespoke team for each job. Yeah, this job's no different really. We're sort of pulling people in who can help us. The sort of work we like to make is a kind of Venn diagram between documentary and animation. That's sort of the sweet spot. I trained as an animator, and I've always loved documentaries, and so over the years it's sort of ended up being that sort of work. And on the right I've got some clips of a show reel, some of our previous work for clients such as the BBC or Channel 4 or lots of different production companies and design agencies. And the kind of visuals you see in our showreel, looking back, there's lots of textures. We sort of think about documentary and animation like authenticity and the aesthetics. And so documentary doesn't have to just look like the news, it doesn't just have to be kind of very simple, local news broadcast kind of style. It can be textured, it can be artistic, it can be creative. So in here you can see blueprints and code and schematics and chalky dust and grit and dirt and all of that sort of thing. We love playing with all of that sort of texture and leaning into the sort of authenticity of analog stuff. And I've been for ages like rubbing my fingers together and being like, oh, texture, yeah, I really like texture, texture. And I didn't really know how to describe this until recently I found this film. It's a kind of YouTube essay, if you like, about, it's got a bit of a clickbait title, Why Movies Just Don't Feel Real Anymore. But there's really nice analysis of films in here, and they come up with this phrase called haptic visuality, which I really liked. And it's basically the idea that through use of your cinematography and your visuals, you can evoke some of the other senses. So maybe you use your eyes to feel a sensation of touch, whether it's temperature or wind or the elements or material or roughness. And yeah, I really like this idea. And so maybe that's what we were trying to do. I'm not sure. A bit post-rationalized, but I just really liked it. So over the years, as well as doing client work, we've done lots of these originals, if you like, where we've, rather than waiting for someone to come to us and say, can you make us a film about X or Y, we've sort of sourced the stories and found the stories and then worked backwards from there and thought, how can we bring this story to life? So I've got 4 projects on here. There's The Brighton Cop, which is a film about Liverpool fans who gather in a pub and sing at the telly, despite them being 270 miles away from Liverpool. They kind of recreate the stadium atmosphere. A North London signage company make these really lovely light bulb letters. This one's about the Cuban Missile Crisis, so it's lots of Super 8 texture and old home family footage from the 60s. And then this 4th project here, Grandad and the Pier, is a documentary about an elderly community who are on the Isle of Man, and they decided to take over their abandoned Victorian pier that was 130 years old and repair it. And so that film's got loads of schematics and the textures of a kind of sea-battered, wind-swept town with the wood of the pier and the rusty steel. And so, yeah, I think that kind of texture idea actually does come through. It's always in the back of our mind, really. So the film we're going to be talking about today is our latest original, if you like, originated piece of content. We call that amplifying changemakers. So, yeah, that's one thing I was going to say is that they're not dispatches films where we've blown open some conspiracy, some terrible thing that's happened. They're all optimistic. And that we like to think of what we do is we're trying to give ourselves and the audience a little bit of hope in this world, which is the sort of thing it feels like we need at the start of 2026. So our news story here is about Phil. Phil is here today. And I've got 2 pictures here of Phil, one of him with a white stick and one with him with a mic stand, both with big dark sunglasses. And so Phil is visually impaired and also the frontman of punk band Social Security. And Phil's actually my father-in-law, so I've known him for years. And so on documentary, you always need to kind of gain access and trust to be able to tell a story. And so we had a bit of a shortcut with this one because immediately, we knew each other really well. But you could say that also added a layer of pressure. And so Phil said, I'm going to run the London Marathon. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, this is interesting. He said, I want to run for the RNIB and raise money for the UK's sight loss charity. Can you help me make a film? And I thought, yes, this is great. This is a good character. I'd like to have a go at this. Yeah. The London Marathon, 2026, April is when it starts. So he asked us last year, and you have to raise a certain amount of money to be able to have your place guaranteed by the charity. So we've got a kind of target, I think it's £2,500 we have to try and hit in terms of fundraising. So that's the sort of ambition. And so for this one, rather than having a client like, like an organisation or a charity or a brand, our client here is Phil. And so, our primary audience, people who might donate. But then we're thinking about, okay, what's the potential release? How could we amplify this? If we're about amplifying it, how can we spread the word as far as possible? So we thought, well, maybe we make the film and then send it to the RNIB and London Marathon and see if we can almost like reverse engineer a client project. So we always ask ourselves this at the beginning: why do we want this film to exist? Obviously, it's raising money for a great cause, and one of the things that I find immediately interesting about Phil's story is, his eyesight isn't completely pitch black, and he's got two different stories, as you'll find out in the film, for each of his eyes, and it's a story that takes place over, his eyesight's changed over time, and I think that's really interesting because I think a lot of people just think if you're blind, you can't see anything, and if you're sighted, you can see. But there's such a degree of visual impairments, a real spectrum. I've got some images here on screen of, they're from the Perkins School of the Blind, of various different visual impairments. So it's, it says glaucoma, macular degeneration, cataracts, achromatopsia, cortical cerebral visual impairment. I don't know what any of these mean on a medical level, but it's got these visual circles that kind of depict different visual impairments. I thought that was really interesting straight away because as a very visual person myself, and the work we do is about trying to use the visual to try and give people a sensation of what something's like. This is an area we could really help. And so ultimately we want to inspire people to reflect. So perhaps sighted folks who haven't considered what it might be like to live with a visual impairment, that's sort of what we're trying to do with this film. So the challenges, what are the pitfalls, trying to think of this at the beginning of the project. Well, Phil's eyesight is a 50-year story, and we want to tell it in a really short form way. And so one of the ways we do this in all documentaries is we allow people to tell their story in their own words. So we try not to have a narrator. We'll do a long-form interview for, in this case, about 2.5 hours, talking about the whole story. And we use all of those words to then try and edit it into a succinct narrative. And another challenge, we really didn't want this to be like one of those comic relief films that's just a bit like sad and pulling on the heartstrings and sort of, a sob story. Like that's not Phil's personality. That's not the story that we've been following. So we wanted to try and find a way of balancing, hardship and optimism, and ultimately leaving space for Phil to be himself. And then ultimately, as I sort of mentioned at the top, accessibility here is a challenge. Knowing that Phil won't necessarily see everything that we've created in the film. And that was a really interesting thing as a starting point. As a filmmaker, we're so used to creating audiovisual content. To say, oh, actually, we've got to make sure it works as audio only was a really useful discipline, which we hadn't had before. And then on top of that, we kind of added some self-imposed challenges. Being an originated piece that we're sort of in control of, we had sort of certain things that we wanted to get out of it for ourselves. So we wanted to experiment and learn and try some techniques that we hadn't done before, shoot this in a way that wasn't using things we'd previously done, push ourselves a little bit. Ultimately be weird for a reason though. So try and think about, okay, how can we try some new techniques, but for a purpose to help tell the story. So we've got this, if you haven't worked out by now, I like Venn diagrams. Here's another one. So here we've got the 3 Venn diagrams of sight loss, running, and punk. And really, it's like, often we think about when we're trying to find characters or documentary subjects, if you've got kind of 2 layers, that's quite interesting, but if you've got 3 layers, that's really interesting. And so we sort of started thinking about this story as having these three circles, if you like. It could be three parts, three layers that can kind of build up through the story. So the first thing that we do on most projects really is do a mood board. So all of these images here are found images online, us trying to work out what should be the visual look and feel of this film. And so we've got kind of punk photocopied posters with ripped up letters. We've got photographs in black and white of Phil gigging with his band. We've got mug shots of people like David Bowie and Sid Vicious. We've got graffiti. We've got feet running through mud, splattering mud everywhere. And we're looking at this kind of high-vis colour, a kind of highlighter yellow, which matches some of the kind of punk poster aesthetic, but also the high-vis vest of a blind runner and a guide runner. And so immediately we start to get a sense of what we want this film to feel like. So this is where we started, and you can kind of, when you see the film, see if we got near that. So we got really attached to this image here, which is the bottom of a trainer running through a muddy puddle, splattering everywhere. It feels kind of a kind of anarchic, kind of punk version of running, right? We quite like this. But it also felt a bit crisp, and to give that idea of sight loss, we looked at a few images of kind of more long exposure photography. So if you have a longer shutter speed, you will reveal more motion blur. So we've got a diagram here that shows short shutter speed will give you a crisp, hard image of someone in action, and a slower shutter speed will give you more blur. So we started trying to think, okay, how can we push this slow shutter speed to make the most of this energy? And we tried various different cameras, and actually, we didn't want to hire a big camera and then put it in the mud. We were kind of worried about that. So we thought, well, hold on, what about if we could try small cameras? We tried a GoPro, and actually that's got a limit on its shutter speed. You can't really get really slow shutter speeds. We tried a phone, and you can't do it usually through the iPhone app, but if you download this app called Blackmagic, you can basically hack into your iPhone camera settings, and it does a lot more than you think it does. So in here, we're able to lock the shutter speed at a 12th of a second. So that means you let in light for a 12th of a second. So you will start to see a nice little bit of motion blur. And on that, you can then shoot at 12 frames per second, which is like animation world animating on 2s. And so suddenly we thought, okay, this is quite interesting look and feel. And ultimately, using a small camera like this, we can put it in interesting places. So this is a moment of weakness, really. This is the only time we've used AI in the project, where I broke and I asked ChatGPT, has a documentary filmmaker ever mounted a camera on a blind man's white stick or walking aid? And ChatGPT, because it loves to fluff us up and tell us all we're really great, said, no mainstream documentary has ever used a cane-mounted camera, but the idea is conceptually rich and could be powerful, used in the right artistic or documentary context. If you're thinking of pursuing this as a project or concept, it would be quite original and potentially impactful. So yeah, it gave me a pat on the back. Obviously it was bollocks, because this is actually just not true. I immediately found a film where someone had mounted a camera on a white stick. This guy, Juan Alcazar, who is visually impaired himself, had mounted a GoPro on his stick and filmed it for this short film, which was quite interesting. And it starts to show the sweeping motion as he walks. To use a white stick, you're trained to have a rhythm with your walking patterns, and so you can sense what's coming. And so I watched this and thought, okay, yeah, we can go a little bit one better. So here is some of the shots, the first shots we filmed with Phil, with a camera mounted to the white cane. And we've got a real fisheye perspective here, so it really distorts the frame, but it gives you more from an extremely close camera. So on the left, we've got the camera pointing up the stick back towards Phil, and on the right, we've got the camera pointing down towards the ground. And in black and white with a slow shutter speed, I think it does actually look quite dynamic. Quite enjoyed it. And one of the things that we really liked is when the white cane comes along the road. I've got a note here to remind me that this is called tactile paving. When you get to a zebra crossing, those little bobbles on the side of the road make you aware you're coming to a zebra crossing, and so the camera judders more as you get there. And we just really liked that. Suddenly, you, as a viewer, feel like you're getting a sensation of how Phil is physically experiencing the world. So we got really carried away with this and started attaching the camera to everything. so this is in the kitchen. We've got the camera attached to a knife as Phil cuts a carrot. We've got it attached to a wooden spoon, stirring in a pot. We could even put the phone at the bottom of a pan, or here attach it to the fridge door. And again, I think you start to get a sensation of that physicality, because you can sense the camera's movement and the judder, how the sort of snap as the knife goes through the carrot and cuts in and hits the chopping board, or the sort of friction as the wooden spoon pushes against the vegetables in the pan. It's sort of, we quite like the fact that the camera, Phil's in control of the camera. We've just attached it and then we go, and I quite liked what that was doing. So within the context of running, we tried loads of different ways of trying to shoot Phil's running. And this is what we settled on. It's a waist-mounted selfie stick, which is a pretty weird thing to wear. But ultimately, you get this great shot that we're really pleased with. If we'd run backwards away from Phil, we would have got the judder of the camera as we take steps. But here, it's connected to him, so the motion blur is in sync with his running. And if ultimately we'd gone back on a dolly track or a skateboard or a bike or whatever, you would have got something really, really smooth, and it wouldn't have felt right. So, yeah, we were really pleased with how this ended up looking, and you get a real sense of the frenetic energy of running, which kind of felt punk, so we thought we'd go with it. And I've got one more example of a shot here before I actually play you the film. We also did this one, which I saw in an advert for some shoes, where they had a knee brace, so Velcro around the thigh and the shin with an angle on the kneecap, with mounts coming off the side. And so we mounted the camera off Phil's leg as he ran. And so as his foot plants on the floor, you get all this judder within the camera shake. So this one on the bottom left is me testing it out, running along the street at home. And then this one on the right is one of the shots we filmed with Phil. And if you're careful looking at the shadows, you will see the rig just stick out for a moment. But yeah, once we make it look all kind of punky, then you don't see that anymore. So yeah, the last slide before I play the film is something to bear in mind, really. Obviously, our eyes are not the same as cameras. For a start, they're liquid and organic. There are certain similarities. We have a lens, and light bounces in through the lens in our eye and hits our retina in the same way it hits a film sensor. But we wanted to be aware of these differences and realise what was possible and what wasn't possible. We don't have an exposure speed or a frame rate, really. That doesn't really translate to our human eyes. Our brains interpret the data that comes in. And yeah, you can have an operation on lenses within your eye, but it's incredibly complicated, whereas swapping lenses on a DSLR is really, really easy. On a phone, it's less easy. These are fixed lenses and you're putting things on top. So we needed to put ND filters on top of the lenses of the phone so we could keep the shutter speed that slow even on a sunny day. And that's quite nice, because that's sort of a bit like how people wear sunglasses to kind of control the light. And so, yeah, we tried to make as many parallels as possible. So I guess that's worth bearing in mind as we play the film. So I'm now going to press play on the film and shut up and let Phil tell his story.
A documentary by Reuben and Co. An exercise in perspective. Yeah, I'm in the middle of being filmed. Hello?
Hang on, say that again. You're in the middle of what?
I'm being filmed. Do that film thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'll call you later. Yeah. All right. Cheers then. Bye. Bye. Sorry about that. I will turn it off. Right. I'm Phil, 68. Yeah. Imagine a geezer who bounces about a bit, who still behaves like he's 8 years old. Sort of sums me up, I guess. Yeah. When you do the eye test with the letters, I can do the top big one. The letters move a bit. It's almost like they're dancing. It's kind of pulsating. And I've got floating bubbles as well. It's like a slow strobe. I got hit in the left eye when I was a teenager. Whack! And all I can remember is everything went red while somebody said, "He needs an ambulance." I remember it being really painful. I just wanted them to do anything to get the pain away. I remember that. It was like looking through a cracked mirror. Everything was like fuzzy, just very distorted. I was a bit young and stupid at 19 and lost and didn't really have a clue what I was going to do with my life. I had no real clue. I think my mates who were there at the time, they were more cut up about it than I was. They looked out for me, I think. I was the joker of the pack because I wasn't, I'm not a big bloke, so I wasn't like the hard guy. The only good thing was that punk had just happened, so I was listening to lots of punk on John Peel late at night on my headphones. Punk was my salvation, really. I got right into it while I was in the eye hospital, and I just thought, yeah, I like that. I belong to the blank generation. It was in that long hot summer back in 1976, so my right eye did all the work for the next 40 years.
Don't know what my future lies, but I'm not really worried. I like to take things in my stride. I never like being hurried. I never made a lot of trouble. I had much to do with the law. Cause the only thing I'm looking for is rock and roll.
In 2016, my right eye, cancer. Sometimes they go out of their way not to say it. I guessed all along. I thought when the bloke in Specsavers said, he kind of half guessed. The thing is, they didn't have the high tech to confirm it. Finally, you see the main man, and he says, "I've looked at all your stuff, but I need to tell you, you have a tumour in your eye." I guess in my makeup, I'm fairly glass half full to overflowing sort of person. I always remember my reaction is, it was like, "Right, what are the options then, Doc?" Whereas my wife was quite upset. Understandable, because it's a bit like, whoa, it's a bit of a game changer. It's something that could reoccur in the liver, which would have been big shit, I was more concerned about stopping the spread of the cancer. If they said, "We're really sorry, we're going to have to take your eye out," I'd go, okay. I honestly thought they might have had to. So the eyesight was secondary to managing the cancer. I literally said, "Do we have to whip it out, Nelson style?" He said, no, we can do proton beam therapy. So I said, "Well, what's all that about?" And then he explained I had to have these markers in the eyeball, and I had to wear a special metal disc, and then I had to wear this special mask. And it's like being in an underground bunker where you're kind of lying on a chair. It's like something out of some kind of David Cronenberg movie. And you're in there, and all the stuff behind a screen, and then it's like a 10-second blast of proton beam. Which killed the tumour but zapped the optic nerve. You could say that my left eye is now my good eye. I was referred to a specialist consultant surgeon who could put an artificial iris in it. So it affords a little bit of light, although I've only really got about 5% vision. So in the house, I kind of know where things are. Although, having said that, I have more accidents at home than anywhere else. Occasionally I slice a hand or a finger or whatever, where I'm being a little bit silly. But most of the time I'm quite careful. I always make sure I've got footwear on that protects my toes. Because I can misjudge. Pouring a hot drink, got those things that make a noise. And also, I listen, sounds. I'm listening really acutely. But once I'm beyond the gate, into the big wide world, I always make sure I've got my cane. Once I start moving, everything goes all over the place. Things are coming at you. See, I can think, oh, is that somebody there? Is there someone there? And there's no one there. It's a lamppost. But you imagine it all blurry, you know, and the figure's starting to morph into something else. But that doesn't stop me from doing stuff I want to do. I hadn't really done any serious running for years. Well, my daughter encouraged me to do park run. Well, you could do this, you could try that, why not? So when I'm running, it's just a complete psychedelic kaleidoscope of colour. It's like watching drawings and you just change it a bit and you flick the pages. Stuff running all around you. This year, 2026, I'll be running the London Marathon. Anything's possible. A lot of people have asked me, how am I going to do this marathon? Well, I will be in the hands of Julia, my guide runner, joined at a tether. She's holding one end, I'm holding the other. To me, to you, we do it Chuckle Brothers. I'm not going to break records. It's not about that. At the end of the day, I just want to finish. Because I'm not really seeing what's in front of me, I'm just locked into my body, where it's going, what it's doing. Living in the moment, being in the zone. I kind of have this visual image about how I'm moving. It's a buzz, yeah, it is a bit of a buzz. Moving and grooving. And when I'm not running, I'm singing with this lot. The thing with punk is the DIY effort. It's similar to the running. It was a bit like, have a go, don't care, why not? Yeah, I know it's going to be hard work, I'll put in the training. And there's no encore, yeah. No encore to worry about. You use less energy to smile than you do to frown. I'll be singing at my own funeral, mate. Here's some stats for you. 1 in 5 people in the UK experience sight loss in their lifetime. So it probably doesn't surprise you why I want to run for RNIB, the Royal National Institute of Blind People. There should be a link on screen now. Anything you give will help other people living with sight loss. Thank you. You're watching a film by Reuben and Co, featuring the music of Social Security, with sound design by Jamie Fry. With thanks to Julia Tyso, RNIB, TCS London Marathon, Social Security, Hope and Anchor, Dave Somerset, Heart Run, Torbay Leisure Centre, Pervasive Media Studio, and the Harrison family. Cheers! That's a true story. They're all true stories tonight. Yeah, if it rains, I'll just wear a hat.
Cheers. Thank you. So yeah, a bit more waffle from me, and then you can ask Phil some questions. So back to the Venn diagrams. That was 3 days filming, so we basically spent 1 day on sight loss, 1 day on running, and 1 day filming the gig, which I think is kind of interesting on reflection. We didn't necessarily set out like that, it just sort of happened. I'm now going to talk through some of the shots that were in that film. I didn't want to give away before, but I'll now explain how we did do them. So these bubbles, these really organic, abstract, bokeh floating shapes within that is Phil's fridge and a pint glass with the camera on the bottom. And we did a load of different ones of these, trying different lighting, and really loved how the pint glass gives you this sort of cylindrical, spherical, refracted light, a bit like an eyeball. And these bubbles are exactly how Phil was describing his eyesight changing on a day-to-day basis. And then this was Phil's idea. He said, what about if we put a hydration tablet in the pint glass? And this becomes the shot that you see in the film when he mentions the cancer diagnosis and the way these bubbles sort of grow and leave the tablet at the bottom and float upwards was just really atmospheric. And again, this is not, one of the great things about making a documentary is you don't know necessarily. It's great to go in with loose plan so that things like this might just happen and you come away with shots like this. These abstract shots that you see at the beginning when he's talking about his injury to his left eye. Is it his left eye or right eye? I get them mixed up now. This is a torch being shone through a telescope and also through binoculars, and we liked how this created these sort of slightly grimy, circular, refracted light, abstract bits and bobs. And so, yeah, sometimes going really analog and messing around with lenses is quite a good way of doing it. And then this idea of almost seeing in a kind of kaleidoscopic or seeing double, seeing a kind of fractured viewpoint. We tried a few different things here. There's loads of really sort of trendy lenses you can buy for phones that are, Instagram influencers have them, and it makes them have a sort of disco filter on their Instagram stories. We didn't get one of those. We used a toy. My son's strange doctor kit made out of wooden blocks. There's this otoscope, toy otoscope, which had this almost kaleidoscopic lens thing, it's just, we'd attached that to a phone. Who knows? That was actually how he ended up doing it. And then this shot here is actually taking some of the footage we filmed, playing it back on an iPad, and putting a foil cylinder on top, and then filming it back through the foil cylinder. So again, like really analog techniques that are kind of like through my kind of animation mindset, and trying to apply that back to the cinematography. And then this drone shot was filmed by Jamie, our sound man, and really, really beautiful shots. And then we took the footage from the drone shots and animated it frame by frame by lining Phil and Julia up in the center of frame. So you get this kind of staccato animation, almost like tracking them, which we really liked that one as well. And then I just happened to be up in London, so because it was only filming on a phone, I just attached it to the bicycle and got a Lime bike and cycled a bit of the London Marathon route. So over Tower Bridge and along Embankment, past the House of Parliament, up towards Buckingham Palace. And that gives us some of that energy that gives you the sort of context of London later on in the edit. So yeah, you might be saying, how did we get this from a phone? Well, you can't just press record on a normal camera app. This is obviously the Blackmagic camera app. It's a Beast Grip mount, which enables you to attach various different lenses and ND filters. We used a variable ND filter because we knew we wanted to have a fixed shutter speed. And then every DP's favorite bit of kit is this magic arm. So that's how we attached it to a wooden spoon or attached it to a knife or the white cane. And then we've textured it in Photoshop. So this kind of photocopy texture that we put throughout and the drawing, that's all Photoshop and Procreate, all done digitally. So we haven't wasted any paper. So that's how we did that stuff. And the same with this collage. This is scanning in magazine letters and rearranging them, basically how people would have done it before, but a little bit more digital with the Photoshop to create some of that post-processing digitally rather than printing out loads and loads of photocopies. And then filming at the gig, this is kind of an interesting thing that happened is we sort of thought we'd do more mounting. We thought we'd mount attached to the mic stand or attached to the guitar stem or to the drum kit. But then that sort of felt awkward and difficult, especially when they've actually got a real gig on. So in the end, we went in the crowd and actually yeah, this sort of, we felt fitted better for how, Phil experiences a gig. Ultimately, in the audience, you're sort of taken away by the music, the energy. And so we got in there, and basically these shots are just shaking it, shaking the camera a lot. Phil stays in focus because we're bouncing in sync with him bouncing. And so that's how you get all of this kind of crazy motion blur. In this shot of Dom on guitar, the camera is basically, it's rotational spin like that. And so you're going to get these nice streaky moments, but it's just shaking the camera. And yeah, the gig was recorded by Jamie Fry, my kind of long-term sound designer and music composer collaborator. And that first half, obviously the end music is social security, but that first half, the more abstract stuff, Jamie actually took a Gibson guitar and played it back through a JCM 900 Marshall amp, which is basically kind of classic rock band setup, and recorded the feedback. So even all of that sound design layer is actually, derived from the band, which is really nice. But yeah, speak to him about that because he's the Dark Wizard. And speaking of Dark Wizards, we found this font that the RNIB had commissioned, which is it's designed specially to be the perfect subtitle spot font because it's really visible, and they've named it Tiresias after a blind prophet of Apollo, who's this guy who, I looked him up, he's famous for clairvoyance and for being transformed into a woman for 7 years, and apparently he fought some snakes, so that was exciting. Had to keep that in there. A couple of other little accessibility things we learned along the way. On our social media edit, we've got a flash warning for some of that staccato, fast cut running sequence. Obviously, Phil says all of the credits out loud. That you don't often do that on films, but actually, like that, to make it a proper radio edit, you've got to say the credits out loud. And so, actually, yeah, we realised that that'll work. And yeah, alt text. This is something the RNIB do on all of their videos. Can be picked up by screen readers. Underneath the YouTube video, you write a description of what the visuals were, and so someone who is partially or hardly sighted can ultimately get that information. And yeah, we sort of realised because we're making the film, maybe trying to get sighted people to understand what it's like for low-sighted people. We realised actually someone mentioned this to us as we were making the film. It's called a low vision simulation kit. And this has been going since about 1979, I think. And these different glasses, they give you various different visual impairments. And so they run workshops with people all around the country, really, to sort of experience degrees of visual impairment and actually check your user journeys, if you like, or your marketing materials or whatever it is, to see if they're functional and accessible. So I thought that was a really cool thing to share. And then this was one other thing. This is one of our kids' books, and I quite liked actually that we've sort of done a similar thing to this really, which is this book's called Invisible Things, and it's illustrator Andy J. Pizza who's just drawn loads of things that you can't see, such as the feeling of heebie-jeebies or deja vu or chaos or an itch, and yeah. I really like that. And so I think maybe in a way that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to create a visual that would give you a sense of something that isn't your experience. I thought I'd throw that in there. So yeah, just to sort of wrap up, what did we learn? Don't be a camera snob. You can film things on phones nowadays. Even, Danny Boyle used it in his latest 28 Years Later film. Leave room for your plan to change. Some of those shots we didn't plan for, they just happened along the way, and that's probably one of my favourite things about making a documentary. And things like, at the beginning, Phil ending up getting a phone call from Dom, one of the band members, and he's like, I'm being filmed. We quite like that, and that's a sort of lesson we knew already, but keep rolling, because you never know what might happen in these sorts of films. And then, yeah, making one edit accessible is really, really hard, and we have been learning loads of things there along the way, and often people just think, well, make it accessible if we add subtitles, and that's just one tiny element. And so, yeah, often doing lots of versions. And that's what the RNIB often do, is they'll have two different edits. One will have a visual description layer, which obviously we don't have in our film, in the audio track. So, yeah. So anyway, the film is now live. It's gone live today on the London Marathon YouTube channel. and it's going to be launched by London Marathon and RNIB. They both loved it. They're both pushing it out there for us, which is amazing because London Marathon have over nearly 500,000 followers. And so here's Phil's page. You can go to his page now and support his fundraising efforts. And he's got to hit his target to be able to guarantee his place. So, we've all got to chip in. And yeah, that's the end. There's a QR code to support Phil's fundraiser. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reuben. We've got time for a few questions. Do you have any questions from the audience?
I'd love to get Phil up as well.
Oh,
So
yes,
if
Phil.
anyone would like to ask Phil a question, jump up with me.
Anyone in the audience got a question?
Don't be scared.
George.
Thanks very much, Reuben. I really enjoyed that, and I particularly really appreciated the generosity with which you've shared all of your secrets and the creative process. It was really, really interesting. This is a really quick question. I want to know what a hydration tablet is, and is it conceptually relevant? Does it mean something in the narrative?
Well, Phil had the hydration tablet, so
Yeah, it just gives, it's like electrolytes you want to take while you're running or before you do a run. It's just, it's got potassium or various kind of things that you'll lose when you're running long distances and you sweat a lot.
or I've taken them when I've been to a music festival and I've got dehydrated as a hangover cure.
Multi-purpose, aren't they? Multi-functional.
Both, yeah, good idea. Yeah. Rehydrate before you've got dehydrated. That's how you just stay ahead of the game, yeah.
Anyone else in the audience got a question? Everyone's being very shy about questions. January thing.
Well, I've got another one. Is there going to be any follow-on? Is there going to be any capturing of the actual marathon event in April?
We haven't talked about that yet, but I feel like maybe, yeah. I would quite like to try and film some of the marathon, but it's trying to understand what context it would come in. But yeah, as I said, we've only just launched the film. It goes out now, so hopefully it's going to start us having lots of conversations with different people, see what happens. Yeah. I've got a question for Phil.
Do it.
What was it like trusting us with all of the weird camera attachments? Because that was all something we've not done before.
It was very strange, especially the bit that felt like this. Was it the selfie stick? Yeah, that was very weird. That was a kind of carry-on film moment, I think. We both Julia, my guardian, and myself, we felt very kind of supported by you and Jamie. We just trusted your ideas, and we thought, yeah, in for a penny, in for a pound, let's do it. Yeah. So yeah, it was fine.
Thank you.
Did you get much interest when you were running around?
Sorry,
with
could
the
you?
stick?
I think the interest was, we were running around a velopark track, so there weren't many people there, were there, that time, with the
No, there was a couple of kids cycling around on BMXs, using it as a cycle track.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't too busy. So.
It wasn't too crowded. I think the bit when we were running up and down past the beach huts, because you wanted puddle shots, and there was this unfortunate family having a picnic, and we kept going past them, splashing into this puddle. I don't know if we soaked their sandwiches or not, but it was...
yeah, no, I think we got away with it.
That was the only bit, wasn't it? Yeah. I think we were saying, we're making a film. Don't worry.
Yeah, we did get some funny looks with some of the strange equipment we had, but
yeah, and going over the zebra crossing a few times was reminiscent of a Norman Wisdom film. For those of you of a certain vintage, yeah.
I've got a question from John. Reuben, how will your learnings about accessibility impact future work that won't necessarily have an accessibility theme?
Yeah, I think it's made us think about it. Like, for example, the alt text, where you're supposed to write a visual description of an image. Often I thought that stuff was for SEO, for search engine optimization, and actually, when you start to think about it, there's some people who can't see the image, or they can see a bit of the image, but not all of the image. It's more information you can pass across, and actually, the process of writing alt text does make you think about, well, why is that image? Why have we gone with that image? And so it's kind of quite useful to make you think about your choices visually more. We'll try and do alt text on everything, I think. In general, like I said, all of our documentaries, we're recording the subject, we're letting them speak in their own voice. We try not to use a narrator. And so quite often they are sort of audio first. So we're part of the way there in that sense. But then the idea of also thinking about every single thing being able to be audio only is harder, but doable. So yeah, that's something we've learnt along the way, really.
I actually have one more question for Phil, if that's okay. What would you say is one essential punk album that everyone should listen to?
The first Damned album. First Damned one, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Tara?
I think that's like an interesting dynamic because it's like a visual and also like auditory film about Phil, but Phil can't see like what the film end result is. So was there anything interesting that was going on in the sort of feedback process between you guys, but like where you're describing like, oh yeah, then this is like a very gritty shot, and like anything you can tell about this process?
Yeah, I mean, Phil obviously saw the edit before today, so was able to kind of we viewed it together and talked about it beforehand to make sure he was happy. Obviously, the main thing you're saying is you wanted to make sure that your story was accurate in the way you've told it, and which phrases we used in which order. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, by listening to this talk today, I've probably explained more detail than ever before in terms of what all the shots are doing. So I don't know if that's changed any of your opinions. Now you know what was in there.
No, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be part of it, and putting it out there, really. So.
Yeah. Did anyone does anyone think differently now about visual impairments based on the visuals? I'm getting some nods. Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Run up to the front here.
Hi guys, that was really great. Thanks, Reuben. I was wondering about the relationship between punk and running. Like, lots of people would consider running not especially punk, and the documentary does a really good job of bridging that gap. But what were some of the challenges there of making running punk?
Well, one of the things you say is that it's kind of the ethic is DIY, get on with it, have a go, and there's a low barrier to entry for running as opposed to something like, I don't know, equestrian. So in that sense, I don't think there's any reason why running shouldn't be punk, because it's sort of free, isn't it? I don't know. What do you think?
I think, as I said in the film, I got back into running through Rihanna, my daughter, encouraged me to do part run. And I do that with a guide runner. In fact, there's various people who guide me around the same course where Reuben did the filming. And I think I like the spirit of part run because it's very much an inclusive event that happens every Saturday all over the world, actually. At 9 o'clock every Saturday, you'll find a part run somewhere near you. And it doesn't matter whether you just walk it or jog it or go full pelt, like in sort of 16, 17 minutes, if you're that fast. But it's for everybody. And I think for me, the whole thing about the spirit of punk was everyone could have a go. You could be in a band, and it sort of captures that spirit, really. So there's the kind of similarity. Very tenuous, I admit, but yeah.
And it's January, isn't it? This is a good time for people to get into running, have your New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Or start a punk band.
Yeah, or start a punk band.
Or form a band, yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Hi. I'm interested in the use of the archive footage, as it were. Was that on Super 8, or was it already on a digital format when it was taken, or what did you have to do to incorporate that in your film?
So that is Phil and his family's home movies, and so Yvonne had already transferred it all to DVDs over the years, and then we brought all of those DVDs into QuickTime so that we could then edit with them. And I think there was about 24 hours of footage, which we've edited into that sort of 30, 40-second sequence. So it's like your life flashing before your eyes, really. But we put that in there because we wanted to give you don't see any of Phil at the front of the film. It's all quite abstract, and there's lots of, typographic moments. And so, yeah, we put that in there really to give you a sense of him as a person, and yeah, try and give you a sense that, you know, he hasn't been as visually impaired as he is now for his whole life. And actually, a lot when you speak to people with visual impairments, quite often that is a common theme, is the story of how their sight has changed has made them adapt to the world in different ways. So yeah, you've changed your way of navigating the world, haven't you, Phil? As your eyesight's changed over the last 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when did you start using the stick?
2018.
2018, right. Because the proton beam therapy that Phil talked about basically gradually faded your retina, is that right?
Well, yeah, the sight loss was a gradual process. Because the optic nerve, as I said, it got zapped by the proton beam, while that also zapped the tumour that was in the eye. So the sight loss was a gradual thing. But it got to the point when I initially did part run, when Rhiannon encouraged me to do it, I didn't do it with a guide runner because I could still see enough to get round. But then I kept falling over, and my perceptual field got more and more distorted, and it sapped my confidence a bit. So I stopped running for about 3 years, and it was only during lockdown that Yvonne, my wife, got me in touch with a guide runner, and we went out, got my confidence back up. So I took up running again with a guide runner, and then the local run had a few guide runners, and one thing led to another. So it kind of changed. But I use the train a lot, and I'm always chatting to people on the train. Like, yeah, I'm that dreaded passenger. Oh my God, not him again. You know. I'm sure I can sense people moving away. You know. I was warned people. I said, I can talk for England, mate. But I'll put my headphones on if you want. You know, if you want a bit of peace and quiet.
But yeah, I mean, I'd put it to you that, like, hearing your story, that the idea that you were falling over and just kept getting back up again, and then you continued to run and you got back into running, and the bravery of running when you can't fully see, even though you might fall down. As we were making the film, we felt that was a strong connection between the idea of having a kind of punk anarchic mindset and being like, yeah, let's go for it. Because I don't think everyone has the same mindset, and so that's ultimately what we were trying to capture here is Phil.
All right. Well, I think that's probably all we got time for. So let's say thank you again to Reuben and Phil. And please do support Phil's fundraiser. All right, before you all go, if you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, please come find one of the studio team. We'll be happy to help. Studio team, give us a wave. There's more people around. It's not just me and Lautim, but they've snuck off. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. If you like what you've seen here today and you want to help us keep bringing you great talks like this one, please do visit watershed.co.uk/donate. Visit Phil's fundraiser first, but then visit watershed.co.uk/donate. Watershed is a charity. We really do rely on the generosity of our supporters to continue our work. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you all again next time.
Thank you.